Hey, what's up guys, Aoshi here, and today's video is on, we'll say, the official impressions that I had with the Gundam Breaker 4 Japanese network test that they had back in March. So I'm gonna answer this right off the bat because I'm pretty sure you guys are already scratching your heads like, why not right after the actual PS5 network test back in March? Why are you doing this now instead of back then, while everything was so fresh and new and, well, everything else in between? And frankly, I'm just going to tell you straight up front, I had other projects going on, namely the Gundam Springtide 2024 event that I co-hosted with a number of Gundam content creators, including Red Wolf Beyond, which you can definitely check out at the links below, which I'll include because it was a celebration of everything Gundam, as much as we could in 4 short days, which I can go on for days upon end of why you guys should be checking it out, but that's not what we're focusing on. Anyways, I wanted my own impressions after 2 days worth of playing both the single player aspect as well as the multiplayer aspect, which another link and another shout to Red Wolf Beyond because, well, if it wasn't for him and his homeboy Hien, we wouldn't be able to test out and try out the multiplayer aspect as short as it was. So this is going to be a little more ad-lib because of the fact that, well, it's not a traditional impressions. This is just kind of a preview thing because of the fact that, well, there was limited things that we could do within the network test. Obviously, we didn't have the full-fledged game at our hands and our fingertips, so I'm just going to go down the lines, going down my notes. So here we go. Basically, about Gundam Breaker 4 that I liked about it is the fact that the frame rate was really stable. There was plenty of instances where it feels and performs at 60 frames per second, and that's a big deal comparatively to, say, something that I'm used to, which would be Gundam Breaker 3. We could throw in NGB, the game that shouldn't be named, but I'll put it this way, it still maintains that level of excitement, that adrenaline-driven rush that you would expect out of a Breaker game, or most notably a Gunpla game that allows you to take your creation and just throw it at the enemy. Not literally, of course. There was only one instance though, where there were noticeable slowdowns in frames, and this was primarily, from what I noticed, singled out to the launch animation only. So this might be just an earlier build, something that they didn't get to fix quite yet at the time of this network test. We don't know, but that's the only instance where I noticed there was a dip in frames. And basically, I'm going to have a number of different clips going on in the background, got B-roll going on, so forth. You'll notice in the launch animations that I guess it's maybe purposely slowed down, who knows, but I can tell you that it doesn't display at the same refresh rate as, or the frames per second as the actual gameplay. So just something that I noticed, but outside of that, the game's very fluid looking, definitely feels fast as we expected, despite the changes to the combat. Speaking of the slower combat, just as we've seen with the trailers and the JP talk shows that showcase Gundam Breaker 4, with certain weapons and single weapons, yeah, it does get flashy with twin weapons in each hands. This is also including ranged weapons, melee weapons, but basically from what I can interpret so far, the button configuration, the keypad, the controller configuration essentially is set based on left and right-handed weapons versus the traditional normal and strong melee attacks that were used to Gundam Breaker 3. I believe NGB was the same as well, but yeah, the days of that do not seem to be present based on going through the multiple stages, or 3 stages rather, but the multiple stages and phases with just single weapons, single ranged weapons, single melee weapons, purposely not trying to do dual wielding, although it is a lot of fun to do dual wield as well. It seems like you just have to get a lot more creative with comboing with your weapons, getting there, utilizing your boost, because with them changing the mechanics and each stage kind of rating you on your combos and the ability to change combos, I'm pretty sure that despite them adding that extra option for players, for people to be a lot more flexible with their Gunpla builds. There are going to be people that have backstories with their Gunpla that only utilize one melee or one range handheld weapon. So we'll see. I'd like to test that theory once that the game comes out, but it definitely feels like it's more related to actually having the stronger parts installed versus just having it load up with as many weapons as you can, which I believe that's kind of what they're avoiding. Because jumping into the next topic, I know everybody has an opinion on the global cooldown, both option parts and EX parts. So even though they are separate cooldowns, I think people are just, they're not sure how to not necessarily deal with it. I would say they're not sure how to think about it, because I believe in certain aspects they do want to kind of make it somewhat balanced a little more, in terms of not just slapping the strongest thing you can on your Gunpla and call it a day, but to kind of give some nuance to, say, some of the powers and some of the optional weapons that you might slap on there. Granted, I do believe that whole process on the other side of that spectrum needs a lot more refinement, because there are instances while we're playing in single player and multiplayer that it seems like the cooldown for those type of weapons seems to be drawn out to be really, really long. And I mean long as in like GBO2, reload, overheat, long times of periods before you can use it again or use something else. Because if you use something as long as that, you can't use anything else until that cooldown is over. So I think it's kind of ridiculous in that respect. I definitely do agree. So like, say if you have a long cooldown time for new Gundam's fin funnels, you should be able to use everything else that's listed either in optional or EX weapons. Hopefully they looked at that, but that's based on what I've seen so far in that regard. It's really weird. I understand they don't want it to be something that allows players to just keep spamming the strongest attack power possible every time. That's kind of what GB3 was a little bit, because Blue Hazel Custom, I was able to just let the funnels go. I'm throwing everything else, rockets, grenades, whatever I could slap on there. I think they want to make things a little more unique, but they also have to balance out the cooldown time and the ability that you might have some other EX stuff on there, so maybe not tie it all into one big giant cooldown. Just my thoughts on that. Unfortunately, one thing that I really wanted to try during this whole network test deal was the diorama function. I'm pretty sure everybody and their mom wanted to do as well. Unfortunately, it was locked off. And then I also ran into the bug that I got told later, shout outs again to Red Wolf Vion, that if you were throwing decals on your Gunpla, it would wipe your progress as soon as you logged out of the game. So I had to restart at least once. I probably would have restarted twice if I kept on playing with my other sign in, but yeah, I had to do that at least once for sure, because everything that I was prepping for when we were doing that big giant collab multiplayer session, I lost all that. So I ended up starting with a stock grandpa, just recolored it and called it a day, which we did get pretty far in. So it's very inconvenient. That's the drawback with, we'll say an alpha build, if we even go as far as that. But I know they officially say it's a network test. It's basically an early build that we're getting thrown at. One thing to note also that I wanted to mention is that just like in the previous Gundam Breaker 3 game, there was a shop for buying Gunpla kits. I somehow was wandering around the little lobby that other people could join into, and unfortunately that too was not accessible. It kind of sucked, because I'm pretty sure they didn't want to accidentally disclose the amount of kits that were being brought into Gundam Breaker 4, other than the fact that they were bringing a whole bunch from before and then some, and probably including some of the, well, they already confirmed Witch of Mercury stuff already, but the exact number I don't think they fully confirmed. I know it's probably at least over 200, because I know NGB had, at least from what from what I've been told from other folks, and it's been confirmed, it's like over 200 upwards of 200 past that. So yeah, it would have been nice to see. It also would have been nice to see not just the listing of suits, sorry, but like hell, give me some box art. I know we got some of that when playing the actual missions, but like just it would be nice for them to kind of update that too, because I know a lot of the suits that they included Gundam Breaker 3 and in the subsequent DLCs that they had, all 5 DLCs, there were some suits or kits in those DLCs that did not have official box art yet. It was basically that P Bandai artwork that they had, which, you know, the plain P Bandai monochrome looking, I only know because both the Hazel Custom Advanced Hazel MG kits at the time were not out yet for new Gundam Breaker 3, excuse me, I almost said new Gundam Breaker, but Gundam Breaker 3. And so yeah, it's just it'll be interesting to see if they can update that or not. Speaking of a slight tangent, if Bandai Namco is watching this, I need my Hazel custom, please. Thank you. We have to recreate that and bring that over from Gundam Breaker 3 for sure. Menu wise, seems pretty clean. It seems very if we're talking the UI is very clean, very straightforward, very reminiscent of Gundam Breaker 3. It's kind of like the same approach that they initially tried with NGB, to be constructively fair. At the same time, it doesn't feel like it's just tacked on and just like very basic looking. It looks like they definitely took some time to spruce it up and make it exciting looking and sort of modernize it for today's Gundam Gunpla fan. That said, I know the title song, title theme isn't the most exciting, especially when you look at the sort of slow march inspirational theme song that you hear from Gundam Breaker 3, but it gets a little catchy. I do like the fact that they do add the your Gunpla as part of that main screen there, pretty much as a nod to the Gundam Breaker 3 menu. But we'll just have to see, because just like I have I would say a pretty good level of excitement around the game. I do feel like that once this game releases, it will definitely be one of the top Gundam games out there. I'm even probably saying this is probably borderline out of Gundam games, this is game of the year for sure. At the same time, like there are still plenty of things that, based on what I've seen, probably could use some work. Oh, I did remember too. Your friends list in game, for whatever reason, seems to be separate from PlayStation Network, which is kind of an odd choice. I'm not sure what justified the decision making in that. But at the same time, if they're a part of your friends list, they are also in your lobby when you're loading into the game for the day, and it makes your lobby feel alive and less empty. And you can also see your friends' progression by jumping into their profile card, seeing what their stats are and what parts they use. So it's really nice. So like it's really cool to see that level of sort of connectiveness, if that's even a vocabulary word, but just being connected to some cool people and seeing how they're progressing through the game. They might have more time than you or vice versa, but at the same time it's like, hey, this is a cool Gunpla, how'd you build it? And basically they give you an idea of the parts that they use. I think they'll go into a little bit of the option parts, but I don't think they go into it too much. It's probably going to be more reliant on your own, you know, knowledge of Gunpla. And at the same time, like, this is going to be the first title that allows you to make SD kits, as we see with our subsequent friend that we make in-game, which I don't know too much about. Unfortunately, the language barrier did kind of essentially made that experience kind of hard to fully comprehend, but he's running a sort of modified Commando Gundam, so it's really cool. I don't know if it'll have the same amount of articulation in terms of part choices and customization. Hard to say. Again, we didn't get to have any access to that. We just had access to mostly HG kits but running different weapons, different kits in terms of the Gun Plus setups, it's definitely a lot of fun, and I'm looking very, very much forward to this entry for 2024. So with that said, that concludes my general impressions of the Gundam Breaker 4 Japanese network test. I think it was really great, despite it being kind of on the shorter end, and essentially, you know, if you're power through it just like any dedicated Gundam fan would, you know, surprisingly there wasn't any I would say major technical issues in terms of performance, just that, you know, game breaking bug where I had to restart my progress again, which is very unfortunate. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys already pre-ordered, I know some of you guys already told me that you pre-ordered, but until then, I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.